So let me know when to start. Give me a heads up when it starts. I think once it starts, only then we proceed. Should we wait?
Make it sound like you started.
Make a sound. I request all of you to please take your seats. Our panelists are here on the stage. As soon as everybody is ready, we'll begin with our session. We're just waiting for all of you to be ready for us. I'll introduce you as
Who instructs those people with that paper which says 2 minutes left?
Achha, usually there's a timer here.
नहीं वो timer है पर वो एक लड़की आ के बता रही है.
I will give you a heads up.
नहीं के लिए no थे नहीं अभी कहाँ थे?
पता नहीं. I'll just check if there are volunteers for
नहीं
that.
अभी हो रहा था.
हो रहा था कोई मिनट.
हाँ 5 वो एक कार्ड लाती थी कि 2 मिनट बाकी है. वो कौन है? तो उनको पूछना है कि 5 मिनट के बाद वो कार्ड लाना है. 7 मिनट दिया है सबको.
ठीक है 5
मिनट के बाद 2 मिनट नहीं 2 मिनट बाकी है.
ठीक है मैं भी
अगर है कोई नहीं तो ये चल रहा है ये लाल तो उसमें क्या चल रहा है?
आई थिंक यूजुअली टाइमर होता है 7 मिनट का टाइमर. डाउन
7 मिनट टाइमर.
हाँ आई जस्ट चेक इफ इट्स फंक्शनिंग. Or we'll arrange the person who I asked, the 5-minute window person. Okay. So I'll start. I'll start now. I once again welcome all our distinguished guests, our dignitaries, and our esteemed panelists to the 5th International Conference on Sustainability Education. I request all of you to please take your seats. And now we are at a pivotal moment, and we're now starting with our opening plenary session, where ideas converge, insights are shared, and collective wisdom takes center stage. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite, we have on stage with us our chair, our co-chair, and panelists, and I encourage all of you to please join us in this exploration of knowledge, insight, and inspiration. It is our pleasure to welcome our chair, Padam Shri Kartikeya Vikram Sarabhai. We also have our co-chair, Dr. Rambhuj, who is the CEO of Mobius Foundation. We have with us our speakers, Dr. Ajay Mathur, Dr. Dipankar Saharia, Mr. Ravi Singh, Mr. Manoranjan Mohanty, Ms. Antonella Vasano, and Ms. Joyce Bourne. Now over to our chair and co-chair for this session.
Welcome back. I think we had a very energetic inaugural session, and this session is so important for the whole 2 days event that I think I need your very apt, very kind attention, please, because it will be basically our panelists chaired by Mr. Kartikeya Sarabhai. They are authorities on their own in their field. But we will also open up for some time, maybe, for the audience also to contribute. And I think without adding any other thing, let me request Shri Kartikeya Sarabhai to chair the session and steer the proceedings of this important plenary.
Thank you, Rambuj. And yes, this is a key session of setting the agenda. And I don't want to say anything at the beginning, but we are trying to see that we have some time at the end so we can have an audience reaction. May I ask Antonella Vasello, Managing Director, International Ocean Institute, for University of Malta, to give her comment? Yeah, as you like. Yeah. Here also. Yeah.
Wherever you feel.
Is this okay?
Yes, sir.
Oh, fantastic. I like being on the same panel at the same time. So it's an honor for me to be here. I hope I redress the gender balance a little on the panel, so that's good too. I mean, looking at the looking at the audience, I see that, you know, from this point onwards, we're not going to have to worry. There's a lot of talent in the audience, and a lot of it is balanced, so that's great. It's an honor for me, on behalf of the International Ocean Institute, to join you for the 5th International Conference on Sustainable Education. I myself come from Malta, which is a small island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, so I would like to bring a bit of a sea breeze, if you wish, or the briny smell of the sea to this conversation. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. So, to our discussions today on the importance of sustainable education, I want to bring the perspective of the ocean or the sea, or as we speak about this nowadays, our one ocean. And if you had to look at a map of the world, a map of the globe, and you follow the contours of the ocean, it's really easy to see how this one ocean connects us all. The International Ocean Institute has long worked in favor of the sustainable use of the resources on this planet, but most especially on planet ocean. In fact, since our foundation in 1972 by Elizabeth Mamborghese, who I have to say loved India and was here very many times on various visits, the IOI, since 1972, which makes about 50 years plus, have provided training and capacity development to mid-career practitioners the world over. What we are focusing on now, also as a 50th anniversary program of the International Ocean Institute, and I think this is something I would like to bring to our debates in the next 2 days, is the issue of literacy on ocean matters in opening the topic up to a diverse audience, not just children, but really to anyone who's interested. And sharing with everyone, making possible with everyone the knowledge we need to bring ahead sustainable development and to thereby guarantee our future on this planet. The people who came before me, in the panel before me, spoke very eloquently about the issues they face, the problems we have ahead of us. And to be honest, there is not much that I can add to their very wise words, except to bring maybe a few facts to your attention, many of which I'm sure you know. The ocean is critical to life on Earth. Somebody mentioned, I think it was Miss Donna, who mentioned that, you know, the Earth regenerates, the planet continues. It is we, humans, who have a need for sustainable development, because that ensures our very own survival on this earth. When we think of the oceans, we should remember, and many of you know this, that every other breath we take, 50% of the oxygen on this planet comes from the generation of oxygen by oceanic phytoplankton. The ocean modulates climate and acts as a carbon sink. It guarantees and provides livelihoods, life, food, economic activity, and is actually home to more than 90% of the biomass on this planet. So I would like for us to remember these important things and also to recall how important it is for not just the people who know, people like us. I know to a certain extent I'm speaking to the converted, but I think it's also important that this message of our reliance on all the ecosystems of the planet, including ocean ecosystems, is shared with many others. We speak a lot about ocean literacy being important. Ocean literacy is, to be ocean literate is to understand the ocean's influence on you, but most importantly, your influence on the ocean. And I think this thought could be extended to any of the ecosystems that will be brought forward for discussion under this conference. Education in sustainability must, by its very nature, take into account all aspects of the planet's biome. We can no longer be justified in treating separately the different parts of land and ocean, the different ecosystems within each biosphere. I think the day has come, and I think we are learning this from our daily life and just simply by looking at the news, that nowhere is our human activity not in isolation. The impact of activity in one area is felt elsewhere. People who live very far away from the ocean, or people who live very far away from the inner land masses or the Himalayas, as an example from our previous speakers, they also feel the impact of activities and other hazards or other things that happen far away. We are more than ever today interrelated closely, not just by the media we consume, but also by the impacts of our activities on our daily life. So someone who is ocean literate does understand, who is environmentally literate, does understand the impacts. So because of this understanding, is able to make informed decisions on their daily life, in their daily life. And if this is not the very definition of environmental education for sustainability, I struggle to find maybe we can discuss what a more concise one would be. I would just like to finish these few words by auguring a successful conference to everyone. I am going to be listening very carefully to your words and to your deliberations, because I think there's a lot for us to exchange and a lot for us to learn from each other, from our different experiences. At the end of the day, we are more united than separate, and this is something that I hope we'll take back with us down the line. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonella. Can I ask Dr. Dipankar to say something? Yeah, sure.
Good afternoon to all of you and to my fellow panelists. It has been wonderful to be here today, and especially in the, this particular session. First thing I would like to introduce that the place where I come from. I come from Assam, the northeast part of India, one of the most vulnerable, places of the country, not only of the country, but of the world. A hotspot. Disaster happens every year. In Assam, we have the Brahmaputra floodplains, water, and we have the barrack. But then we have rainfalls. It has been, years and decades of rainfalls, but the events are extreme now. Why is it extreme? We all know. It may be natural, or it may be, anthropogenic. The things that we are doing, the rise of this, temperature of the water in the sea, creating the cyclonic storms, very, very extreme precipitation events now happening in the northeast, landslides. One more adding factor to it is the degradation of forest, adding to more flooding and soil erosion. The human impact is immense, and especially the women and children. So, what to do about it? We know what's happened in Uttarakhand. If you have gone through the newspaper today in the morning of Times of India, you'd see that, last 3 months, how many lives were lost? What is the, basic things that is happening due to rapid urbanization, the pressure on the hills, the tourists going there and, the want to do business, more infrastructure and, creating haphazardly, there are environment clearance happening. But how are you reaching there? You happen to hear about Gujarat. Did you hear about so much floods, a decade back? I don't think so. We are prone to floods. We are prone to national disasters, cyclones, and all this. But I think the climate change is a big factor to add to all of this. I'm from Terry, and we have been working in this field of climate change since the end of 80s, when it started world over. This happened, this is not something, climate was just climate, when it started off probably from the Industrial Revolution, when you started using more of this fossil fuel, starting from coal, then to the, the oil and the crisis and the aerosol, everything is happening. And then climate become climate change, because climate did not remain same, and we are to be blamed it partially. And how we can influence this is to strengthen our education system. While we speak about the education system, I don't think so it's only about formal education. I see among the audience one person from Assam, Jadav Payong. You might have heard him. Jadav Payong, can you please raise yourself? He is the forest. He is known as the forest man. So, how a person can really influence a change, who have imbibed that that knowledge and that that willingness to contribute to whatever we say now, to carbon credit or offsetting carbons or the different things. But what exactly are you doing? How is education contributing to all these factors? We can add everything to the curriculum. I think that will be something that we should really advocate for, everything from the nursery to our 12th standard, you must have a subject that makes us aware. But this awareness should be going us to action, knowledge to action, the transformation. I think the youth, the students are playing, but we need more active role, something that has happened from the Europe, a young child, having created this impact on climate change. But how will in India, because we know we are not leaving anything for our next generation if you move the same way we are moving. We know what's impending in before us. If you cross 2 degrees, it is disaster. We are in shortage of potable water in next 2-3 decades, severe shortage. The glaciers are melting, nobody is, it will not stop. the way we have to really work for it. I think the students, the educators, we all have a role, and not only in the urban, but to reach to each and every corner of the country. It is a global thing, we have to act globally, that is there, but at least for our country, we should be reaching to the corners. As we are in Terry, we have our regional centers. I have been there in the Guwahati Regional Center for years. And we have reached to different states, different NGOs, but how much? Everybody has to contribute in reaching to the, to the corners and to reaching out to the communities. It is not about the formal education. It is about the informal education that we really have to impart to the communities so that we can really make a change. Climate change is not easy to reverse. It's not something that would be reversed, just next couple of decades. It has to have effort from all sides. It has to have the effort for cutting down emission, to using of efficient, buildings, then going for renewables, and at the same time going for a big effort on awareness that transforms into a reality in the future. Otherwise, there is disaster happening again and again and every time. And how to go about it, that is the main, crux, that how we work for this. So I already have the buzzer on to end this, but I strongly feel that some major action needs to be taken in the educational front, not only in the formal education, but informal education, reaching out to the vulnerable communities, especially the hills. If you see in India, the hills have faced the biggest disasters of the all time in the recent past. Everybody knows it. And also the coastal lines, the cyclones that's happening every year. Orissa, I think, has the biggest, hurricane is equal to hurricane 5 or whatever score it has. We have Delhi, 999, the air quality index. You don't have more than that. The reading would have been more than that otherwise. So that is the extent. We are in a gas chamber of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. How to make this difference? I think the youth, the students, the educators, we all have a major role. And in Terry, we have this division called, our Environment, Education and Awareness Division. We are there reaching out to different countries, different states of India. And one of the main flagship programs that we do is about the Green Olympiad. This is basically a type of, exam that is held in schools, and this time we are, doing it for about 1.5 lakh students have registered for it. More than 2,000 schools have registered for it. It creates awareness on environment, sustainable development, the sustainability issues. So these are the things that we are trying from our end. The green schooling project that we are doing, the green school project that we are doing at Tata Steel, reaching out to the communities in the areas where the Tatas have their schools, in near about Jamshedpur and Jharkhand and all these places. Then we have my co-panelists have just spoken about ocean. We are doing a project on ocean where we are seeing the pollution. The students are doing it in the pollution of especially the plastics. So all these things are happening, but we want to contribute more. And at the same time, it has to be a global effort, the government effort, NGO, and every single individual has a role to play. Climate change is not just, we just cannot ignore it. It's happening to all of us. We face it every day. Everybody is saying the temperature is rising, but why is it rising? There are different factors for it. So let's work for it. I think we can contribute. We can make a change that happen, as Gandhiji says, to be the change. You make the change for yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ajay Mathur is not with us in person, but he sent a message, I believe. So can we just quickly play that message?
Greetings to all of you, to the distinguished participants who are in this area of sustainable education and are here to be part of the 5th International Conference for Sustainability Education. I am delighted that all of you are here, and this to me is a pivotal moment in history as we look at how climate change and actions to address climate change are changing the world. At the International Solar Alliance, I and my colleagues work on how to create solar as the energy source of choice in all our member countries. One of the key issues that I want to flag to you is the fact that we have a very different discourse where the information, where the knowledge is generated, and a very different discourse in the places where it is used for policy action. I would like us to be able to bring these two together, that of inquiry and that of action. There are many ways of doing it. If you're talking of new areas, well, clearly the IPCC model of having a summary for policymakers helps. Because what it more than anything else focuses on is that what in the huge reports that IPCC makes on climate change, in those huge reports, what is it that is of greatest relevance to policymakers. A second model is when we are ongoing with a project. For example, India has a range of policies in place to bring in more and more renewable energy into the country. Well, in such a case, policy change occurs first that there is a problem. Therefore, an adequate number of people have to say that there is a problem. The second is to find a solution, to show that it is workable technically and commercially. And most importantly of all, to show that there are business models through which it can also be provided to various people. And then the kinds of policy changes that are needed to make this technological, economic, and business model approach large scale, that's where policy action makes a difference. I would strongly urge that we bring together the logic of inquiry on one hand and the logic of policy action on the other hand, and try to see how policy relevant information can both be generated and then disseminated to the people who will make the difference. I look forward to having a discussion with all of you to see how is it that we can move ahead. I thank you all for this great opportunity.
Thank you. That was really vital, the point. And I think this thing he brought out of the difference in the way we talk about climate change in education and the way we talk about it in policy making. And I think that's a very important point of how you need to bring this together. May I next go to Joyce Pawan, Chief of Education of UNESCO in India. Joyce?
Good afternoon, everyone. Namaste. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Kartikeya, and of course, Ramboj, both of whom I have become more acquainted in the recent days, and I'm very privileged to learn of their wisdom, their humility, and most of all, their humanity. Thank you again to Mobius Foundation for organizing this important event as a testament to our common commitment to educate for climate action and sustainability. I'm honored to join these esteemed panelists with you today. Good morning, again, good afternoon. My name is Joyce Pawan. I am Program Specialist and Chief of Education with UNESCO New Delhi office here in India. And in UNESCO, as well as the United Nations system overall, climate change ranks highly among the long list of international concerns. And so, as aptly stated in the concept note of this 5th International Conference on Sustainability in Action, the pace and scale of what has been done so far and the current plans are insufficient to tackle climate change. This is exactly what the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, said some 10 days ago when he did a press conference for the G20 Leaders Summit. And I quote, "We cannot go on like this. We must come together and act together for the common good. The climate crisis is worsening dramatically, but the collective response is lacking in ambition, credibility, and urgency." The UNSG further called on the G20 leaders to urgently act and show leadership on climate. The international community's recognition on the importance of education and training to address climate change is not new. There have been so many meetings, conventions, agreements, and calls to action for governments to educate, empower, and engage all stakeholders and major groups on policies and action relating to climate change. To act together, though, to take action and to equip learners with the green mindset and to take immediate climate action is so necessary. But even if this is so, then why is it that nearly 40% of national curriculum frameworks of 100 countries reviewed by UNESCO in 2021 had no reference to climate change? As the UN agency with the interdisciplinary mandate that includes education, natural and social sciences, UNESCO has been working on global initiatives to advocate for sustainability and climate change education. We believe that it's not only unified action, but also the mobilization of political commitment and engagement of key education stakeholders that's needed to make any real progress and to keep the momentum going. As I lead UNESCO's efforts to tackle climate change through education in India, Bhutan, the Maldives, and Sri Lanka, I'd like to elaborate on two key initiatives that UNESCO is engaging and promoting to accelerate the implementation of climate change education and to transform education systems. The first is Education for Sustainable Development, and the second is Greening Education Partnerships. The first initiative is UNESCO's Program on Education for Sustainable Development, or ESD, which has been referred to today and which many of you are already partnering with us on. So ESD, what is it? It's actually a global framework and declaration to implement sustainability education through policy changes. Its implementation network, the ESDNet 2030, focuses efforts on the following 4 elements, which I believe is relevant to any organization, and that is knowledge sharing and mutual learning, advocacy, collaboration and partnership, and monitoring and evaluation. Taking a lifelong learning approach, starting from pre-primary to adult education, ESD aims to equip all learners with critical competencies covering not only knowledge, but also social and emotional awareness and actions, including critical thinking and collaboration. With such knowledge, skills, values, attitudes, learners gain insight into the complexity and the interdisciplinarity of the climate crisis, how everything is interconnected, as well as how to also contribute to problem solving in daily routines. Next, I turn to the Greening Education Partnership, GEP. Drawing upon ESD's holistic approach to learning, the Global Education Partnership was launched at last year's Transforming Education Summit in September 2022. It is again a global initiative that aims to provide countries with strong, coordinated, and comprehensive action to equip learners of all ages with the skills and knowledge needed to cope with climate change and to promote sustainable development. It's an open and inclusive community of practice among member states, organizations, and institutions, promoting, implementing, and enabling to get every learner climate ready. And to date, there are 600 organizations, 52 member states that have joined the partnership with a strong commitment to green education systems. They work around the 4 areas of transformative education, which are greening schools, greening curriculum, greening teacher training and education system capacities, and greening communities. This conference is on educating for climate action, And going back to what Mr. Garg was mentioning earlier today about teachers, they are indeed at the core of any learning process. In 2021, UNESCO and Education International conducted a global study of 58,000 teachers, and the findings unfortunately revealed that while teachers are very motivated, a quarter, 1/4, feel very less informed and not at all confident to teach about climate action or about sustainable consumption and production. At the school level, at the system level, they mentioned that there is a lack of curriculum coverage of climate action, climate change education, and ESD, and this is the most profound barrier at the system level for teaching ESD themes, while at the school level, teachers mentioned the lack of relevant equipment and tools to impart knowledge on ESD. We need to find ways to appropriately support teachers and educators to ensure that ESD and climate change education is incorporated in the curriculum so that there will be a natural linkage between the subjects that they teach and the climate change education that is needed. They also will not feel so much of the burden to master yet another complex topic, and that they can feel more confident to impart knowledge on climate change to students. So as I close, I'd like to share with you a tangible and sincere contribution of UNESCO towards climate change and sustainability. Our New Delhi office is publishing our 5th State of the Education report for India, which for this year will focus on education to address climate change. In close collaboration with CEE, in partnership with Mobius and UNICEF, as well as other UN agencies, we are going to leverage on UNESCO's global experience and CEE's expertise in the local context of India on climate change education. Our report will contain, among others, up-to-date analysis of how climate change-related topics are taught at each stage of education here in India, training and support available to teachers in their delivery of climate change education, integration of traditional knowledge and linkages in India, and school disaster readiness within the context of climate change. The report will be launched next month. So for participants here in India, I do hope that you keep your ears open and eyes on news about that. So thank you again for this opportunity to gather among equally committed climate action educators and warriors, and I look forward to more meaningful discussions. We should talk less and act more. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. May I now request Sam Barrett, Chief of Youth Education and Advocacy Unit at UNEP, to share his thoughts.
Great. Morning. Afternoon. So I'm going to start with 2 questions. And the first question is, who can think of or can remember a teacher they had that made them love nature? Put your hand up. I had one, and they make all the difference. My teacher, Mrs. Wolfe, made me fall in love with birds. I wrote to Sir Peter Scott asking about 2 whooper swans left in writing, where they'd gone. I spent a lot of time looking in trees. And I noticed when birds are here, but I also noticed when birds are not here. And the absence of birds and birdsong is one of the things that I think worries me the most, because you can see how climate is changing in front of your eyes and your ears. My second question is, hands up if you think our current approach to environmental education is working. Not many. We've got a lot to do. And I think what I want to say in my short remarks here is that, we good? Okay. Is the first thing, it's speed matters. And I think the biggest challenge we have is that we are going way too slow, and we need to be a lot more radical in how we take on this challenge. And the status quo we currently have is not acceptable. And I think that there are a number of different things that we need to think about how we can change things. Because winning slowly on climate and nature, the two go together, is just another way of losing. And we're losing because the wins we have are not big enough and they are too small. So what I wanted to say is a couple of things. Time matters. And so I think there are three things we need to do differently. One is young people need to say what is good enough and what is not good enough, and be stronger in their demands for change. They need to say what do they want from a university education they pay money for, and what do they not want. How do they want courses to change so they're meeting their needs? And so I think young people are the strongest lever we have to change the education system we have to the education system that we need. My second point is that I think skills need to be on everyone's agenda. If we are going to meet this green transition, we can't just afford to have courses that are open. They need to be directed more cleanly and clearly at the skills gaps that we have in the world. We know that there are 2% more green jobs than there are people filling them, and we know that if you have a green skill, you're more resilient in the jobs market. We also know that more women than men are going to miss out on these jobs unless we do things differently. So investing in STEM for girls is critical. The third and final point I'll say is that we need to think outside of the classroom. What will happen in the classroom will be foundational, but how we reinforce that, I think, is critical. And we're doing a number of different things with the video games industry to get them to decarbonize and put green activations in games. And we're working with 50 of some of the biggest studios in the world. We're also working with the sports sector to think about how they rely on nature, but they're not investing in nature, about how they change their practice for the playing fields they need. And we're also working with some of the world's biggest youth movements on tide turners to get young people to engage in plastics as a way of that being a gateway to wider systemic change that they can then take. And I feel like those outside classroom activities are fundamental if we are going to get young people participating in change rather than being taught about change. It's when your hands are dirty you learn the most. When you're taught things, you may be thinking about many other things and it may not set in. Whereas when you're participating, that's when change really happens. And so my points I would say is I feel like governments need to think about environmental education not in the last paragraph of the bottom of the text that they give the least amount of thought to, but it comes up their agenda. And I do think environment ministers that we work with need to be asking more of education ministers. We do know it's easier to change the course of history than it is to change a history course. Things do not change fast in education, and that is a problem. And so what we need to do is have demand and supply relationship from environment ministers to education ministers to try and change that dynamic. And we also need private and public sector that need to hire the right people for the new jobs to be asking a lot more of the kind of talent they're being provided. So the change we have is complex, but the change we have is possible. And right now, everything is in the red. But the future we have in front of us is not yet set. There is still time to make a difference, but how we make that difference depends on doing things differently. So being radical has to be the new normal. We don't have time for keeping on doing the things we've been doing that have been failing us for so long. Not one hand went up when I asked the question, is environmental education working? So the premise of the next 2 days should be, what are we not doing that we should be doing? What is working we should be doing more of? And who are we not talking to that isn't in this room that should be here that can make that difference? And so my message to this is I'm really keen to listen and hear what's working. I'm really keen to get young people feeling like they have power and they need to use more of it, but also to think about how we join the dots in this challenging moment in human history to make sure we are not the last civilization. We are the civilization that turns the clock and makes the difference. Thank you.
I thought we could have a few questions or comments. If you raise your hand before we break for lunch, if anyone would like a comment. Yes, at the back there. Just take the mic, please.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Dr. Nitasha from Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh. I have a suggestion that, as we said, that the climate education should be integral to the education of the kids. I suggest that the government should take an initiative to make the climate education an integral component of the curriculum, So that by enforcing that, one who scores good in the climate education will go further for the specialization further in the studies. This way we can indirectly motivate the parents also. Because these days we find that the parents are more focused on making their kids a doctor or engineer, but they're not making them aware about the changes in the climate which would have a greater impact on their quality of life in the future. Not as an individual, but as the community, or as we call as a nation as a whole. So I think we can take that an initiative, indirectly or directly motivating the kids, making this a frequent requirement. In fact, for the various boards, they can make a requirement that every school in every class should have a regular. Yeah.
We'll just go to the next one. We'll
Thank
come back
you.
to these points.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there's a hand.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have a mic
one
here.
at the back and then two in front.
Sir, I have a mic here.
And this, yes,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. Hi,
Just
this is
introduce yourself
yeah,
first.
Anand Pendarkar. I'm from Bombay Sprouts. We formulated the ICSE curriculum, I mean, not this ICSE, but the Indian curriculum for science education. In 1990s, I was part of the environmental science curriculum team. And in 2006, the Supreme Court also said that environment education should be for everyone. And now we've gone and made that an optional subject for children to take. So like we're saying, that we need to have the subject from kindergarten upwards. And second is that youth are feeling a lot of climate anxiety when the policies and what's being taught are completely at loggerheads. So what do we do about that?
Thank you. Here, who's got the mic? Yeah.
Richard MacDonald from Switzerland. I've got a question for the panel about how we can create this acceleration that I think we all agree we need through embracing the private sector, philanthropic, but also private investment in education to create this acceleration. There's political resistance to private-public partnerships because it seemed to be a government responsibility to provide education. But does the panel feel that the private sector can accelerate and create that urgency?
Thank you, Richard. One here, and then there's one at the back there.
I'm Vijaya Chakravarti from Indian Women Scientists Association, Mumbai. I was enjoying listening to Mr. Barrett. I think, children and adults, I think we learn best outdoors. So getting our hands dirty, I think that is very important because we are spending most of our time indoors. So it's time we go out. And the other thing is skill development. What we are learning is not really practical. It's really theoretical, which we have never put into action. So I think the time is right and ripe to be outdoors and to work with our hands and in skill development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I'll take just the last one at the back there. Oh, there are two.
Thank you. I'm Neeta Ganguly. I'm a climate reality leader. So I had a pilot project at Sanskriti School where I worked for 10 years. And in the line of chemistry, biology, and physics lab, I also had an environment lab, no textbooks. We had our own syllabus integrated into the regular syllabus. 5 minutes was pinched out from every period. An environment period was created. Every child from the school went to that. They could express themselves. They could, as you spoke about the handprints, we only did handprints. So unless the child practices it, it will never learn it because otherwise it becomes jargon and boring when we use only terminologies.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. Two more here. But I have to end with these two because we have to, okay, the two questions in the same row.
My name is Rituraj and I'm also from Assam. My question is inspired by Sam about thinking radical. And I was recently in a conference in Helsinki where young people have started to talk about climate repair. So my question is, are the new technologies that we are seeing, geoengineering, whether we use that or not to save lives and to buy time, should be or not a part of the climate education system? Thank you.
So I'm Neela Majumdar with Earth Day Network, and thank you, Mr. Sarabhai, for mentioning our e-handbook, which is actually available for everyone. This is basically a small handbook on what is climate change, but it also teaches innovative methods, as you said, to ignite the minds of youth. And these are simple technologies such as using puppets, using comic characters, using films, and so many other innovative methods to engage the students that the teachers can use to actually teach climate change. So we'd be happy to do more workshops with teachers on this.
Thank you, thank you. Should I close or should we be answering? Do we have time? Or maybe I can, if anyone wants to comment on anything we just said for a minute, then please do so, and then I will make a few comments.
With regard to professions, we should have climate change being taught both formally and informally, and with hands-on training, really going out and learning. But I feel all profession can contribute. Even doctors, engineers, all can contribute in their own way, to their daily lives. So it is about everybody. Every individual has to contribute for this thing. It is not about that, we are specialized in climate change, therefore we will only work. Yes, you will require those kind of people to, give you the headway to where to go. But every individual here present, any profession, we should be contributing to this, whole effort of, combating climate change. And so this is the, answer for you.
If I may add something small to this conversation. We tend to focus a lot, and rightly so, because the topic is attractive, on the question of educating children and youth, which, we're always saying, we've created the problem, they will need to look for the solution, they will need to implement it. But at the end of the day, each and every one of us is a consumer and a decision maker in our everyday lives. And that cumulatively has power. So I always like to think that when we need to make change, when we need to bring change, when we need to educate or maybe empower or make people more literate, I think it is correct to think right across the spectrum of the population. In my personal field of expertise, I do come across a lot of professionals in different fields, of course, but who have not much climate knowledge, if you wish. I mean, I always give the example of my dentist who thinks he's a professional man, but he thinks that climate issues are not, something that affect him terribly much. But in reality, we're all in this together. So my suggestion would be to widen our thinking about how to enhance climate literacy, how to reach out to people, because it's only when people understand what they love and love what they understand that they can be empowered to make the changes needed. So that would be my call.
I think a lot of the people who are here on the room had somehow a fly in the wall, because you're all raising the questions that our report is going to say in the next month. And yes, eco-anxiety, yes, the importance of project-based or activity-based learning to get learners, teachers, and their hands dirty, and to integrate exactly what it means, climate change. And yes, the need to integrate climate change education into curriculum, not only for education policies, but in all development policies, as we were just talking to Kartikeya a couple of days ago, because the climate issue, the climate crisis is here and now. It's for not just myself, but dentists and gardeners and teachers and students and parents, most of all. So how do we get people to act together? Private partnership. Politicians, people on the streets, I think it's the idea of changing mindsets. First and foremost, if they understand that this matters to me, this will influence me, not just today and not just tomorrow for my children or for my younger generation, but it matters. I cannot breathe, or I cannot walk with, go into the nice sea and enjoy the sea because there's plastic or because there's pollution, there are no more butterflies, etc., etc. It matters to everyone, and that is the hardest thing to do, to change the mindset, but not so much that it causes anxiety, but it turns it around to saying, like, I understand this fear, I understand that I do not know and I may not know, but I need to gather with those that know, who may also be feeling the same way, and this is how the collective action can work. And I see the youngsters up there on the top, and you may know, you may be fearful, but use the fear to gain the knowledge, to get the action going, and to talk to others who feel the same way. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Does this work? So just to go through the questions. So Richard, I think the private sector should certainly be included. It's just kind of how, where, and on what. So happy to talk more with you about that, because I do think it might not always be obvious, but I think people are always welcome, and every contribution is needed. Just the colleague from the Scouts around the trade-off. I always feel like it seems to me that nature always loses if there is a trade-off. It never wins. And so the question is it's never a fair trade-off when it comes to policy making. So the more we can do to kind of fight and defend nature from a trade-off that it has no voice in, the more likely we are to secure what we require, given that nature provides 30% of the climate mitigation we need. I don't think I've been on for that long. So the next one, just in terms of Rituraj on geoengineering, I'm going to answer that question differently, which is I've been really interested in seeing the examples of rock weathering. In Kenya, just the laying down of basalt on farmers' fields is increasing yields by 15%, and it's locking in carbon as well. So geoengineering doesn't have to be magnets in the sky. It doesn't have to be kind of science fiction. I think there are already so many nature-based solutions that we don't think are innovative enough for the west coast of America to take seriously, that we should be putting more time and money into nature and starting there before we have to go into the lab to come up with a crazy idea that may or may not work. So I think we already have the solutions. It isn't rocket science, literally. And I think we can find some of those much more closer to home that have yields and dividends for nature, not just on science alone. So I would say there's a different way of thinking about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the fantastic questions and discussion. I just wanted to at the end make a few comments. First of all, this whole question of is climate change, can it be an integral part? Is it now an optional subject? Is it something which is, as Sam was asking, is EE working? Now, we have to realize that through the Supreme Court action, climate change, before that environmental education, we are one of the few countries in which it is a compulsory part of every level of formal education. So that's the first thing. It is there. The next question is it satisfactory? So over the years, the textbooks have improved. So you can see when this judgment came out, I remember in Gujarat, all they did was to change the cover to saying now this is the environmental education book. But over the years, things have happened, and if you see this NCERT textbooks now, there's a lot there which is on environmental education, on outdoor education, on what you can do. Many of the issues raised. But you come back to Sam's question, is it working? Now, I was wondering, should I raise my hand or not? And everyone else, because the minute you say working, what do you mean by working? Has climate change solved? I mean, people come up to us and saying, okay, you've been around for so many years, but climate change is still there, environmental problems are still there. So the point is, has the consciousness gone up? And I would say certainly it has. Certainly the new generation, the type of questions they ask, it has gone up. I was just talking to my grandkids' friends at Diwali and things, and they are so conscious about the smoke coming out that they are certainly nowhere near my childhood, even my children's childhood, how they looked at firecrackers. They now, when they see a firecracker, they think of smoke rather than the light. And I think there is no doubt there is a change. There is a real problem in not having enough resources for research. And I think I've been asked all over when I go anywhere in the world, India has had this. Many of the children who have gone through this new curriculum, whatever it's worth, are now entering society. How different are they? And I said, I have a lot of anecdotal information, I have a few research, but I would think this is such an important point, and I wish we could raise Sam some money, because India is one country which has actually done this. The policies in place, NCERT has changed it. Why are we not really researching it? And when it comes to COP and IPCC, it should be noticed that when I spoke about education to them, they said we can only take data from a class 1 or 2 journal. Now, is all this data, what has India done in any of the journals? It is not. I mean, there are a few articles, but nothing much. So I would say that that is something which is critical to do. Lastly, there was this question of, sorry, the technology one, I think Sam actually did deal with. There's just a lot of technology, both educational technology as well as this. But when it comes to educational technology and tools, I think Sam rightly said, there are some natural things which we can do. I am often said, do you use solar energy in India? This was some years ago, before all the Solar Alliance came. And I said, yes, 95% of the chilies in India are dried through solar energy. It just happens to be a chadar put outside with chilies on it, and we have what is called Seedha solar. We don't have solar going through a PV machine which then is connected to something and then it works. So sometimes, is our clothes dried through wind energy, wind power and solar? Yes, it is, through a string. So there are many things which we do which uses this energy. It does not mean that to use solar energy in a country where you see the sun most of the time, you need a machine to do it. Yes, you do have that thing. So I think we have to keep our head a little right, that we are doing certain things, but please treat them that way, that this is also solar energy. So I'll now give it back. I thought, Rambuj, if you want to make any comments, otherwise it goes back to her.
The only last thing that I would say, this solar energy, I think India, of course, when we were doing in UNESCO, the World Science Report, the innovation ecosystem, and I think we may not have many innovations, but grassroots innovations like this solar drying, so many, what we call it jugaad, we are top on the world. So I think our education is some way, I think, reorient towards the deeper roots which our society has. Thank you.
And with that, we have successfully concluded our opening plenary session. I would like to thank our co-chair, and our esteemed panelists on our stage, and for a wonderful audience. I would now be requesting our chair, Mr. Kartikeya Sarabhai, and co-chair, Dr. Rambuj, to kindly present a memento to our panelist, Dr. Dipankar Saharia, who is the Senior Director at Administrative Services and Regional Centers. Can we have a great round of applause, please? I now request them, along with the memento, we are also giving them a WWF kit and a Dabur hamper.
Let me just this is a gift from WWF, courtesy of Mr. Ravi Singh, Secretary General of WWF. And unfortunately, he is preoccupied somewhere, so he could not make it, but he will come later.
Moving forward, I would be requesting them to kindly present a memento and the hampers to Ms. Antonella Vassallo, who is the Managing Director at the International Ocean Institute, University of Malta. A great round of applause, please. I now request them to present the memento to Ms. Joyce Pawan, who is the Chief of Education, UNESCO, India. A great round of applause, please. I now request them to present the memento to Mr. Sam Barrett. A great round of applause, please. I would be requesting all the dignitaries on stage for the group photo, and to our audience, thank you for being with us. I now request you all to join us for a lunch. We would reassemble at sharp 2 p.m. for our next round of sessions. I would also like to remind all of you to please collect your conference kits from the registration counters that are right outside the hall. And see you at sharp 2 p.m. I hope we all reassemble very timely so that our next session of next leg of sessions are held timely. Thank you so much.